Hello, everyone who's joining in. Great to see you this evening. As you're coming in, if you could please just type into the box, just type where you're calling from and also the grade of your teen. Okay, so far I see Earl from Atlanta who has a 10th grader. There's Charles from Hartford with a ninth grader. Courtney from Chicago has an 11th grader as well, and Sarah from San Jose has an 11th grader. Um, Roxanne from Los Angeles has a 10th grader. Are there any more? Okay, I see Bridget from Dayton and Hequan from Needham. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Hequan has a 10th grader. All right. Okay, great. And so that assures me that everyone can hear me as well. And so there'll be several others who are joining. I am going to go ahead and get started. I appreciate you coming in on time. And so we will get started with how to help your teen get in and get money for college. So I want to just start out with just a little bit of housekeeping, just to invite you to turn off everything else that's in your background, some of the other distractions that may be going on. And also, if you can, please silence your cell phone and just really use this time as a timeout for yourself and really learning what you need to do to support your teen's success with getting in and getting money for college. So, one of the questions that I have for you to start out is just to ask you, what do you think are your teen's college prospects? Um, and the way I'd like you to respond to that is just saying, do you think that they'll definitely get into their top choice colleges? Will probably or will likely not get into their top choice colleges? And so I have a poll that I'd like you to just select the poll response, and we will see what everyone has to say. Okay, I have a few. All right. Okay. Wow. Okay, this has never happened before, but everyone selected probably will probably get in. And so usually there's a bit more of a spread in terms of what the response is there. But all of you said that you think that your team will probably get into their top choice colleges. Now, the interesting thing about this stat is that what teens believe is that only 53%, well, that's a little bit over half, believe that they will probably get in. Um, a big number of them, 42%, say that they will definitely get in, and only 5% say that it's not likely. Now, when I've done this poll before with parents on webinars, many of them are in the will likely not category as well. And so this question actually came out of a Princeton Review study. And one of the key findings from that study was that students don't prioritize learning. What they instead do is focus on the end goal of college acceptance. So college acceptance, is actually where they're focusing, but all of the other things that support getting into college, those things teens aren't focusing on. And I would add to that quote, just from my own experience, saying that it's not so much as they don't prioritize learning. teens aren't necessarily focusing on the necessary actions that they need to take to get into college. And with that, I have another polling question for you that I'd like you to respond to. Where is your teen in terms of their attitude about this? So does this sound like your teen? I'm too busy. Or perhaps your teen is saying, I got this. So they already know that whatever is going to happen, it's going to be favorable for them. The third one is, I got time. So perhaps your teen is thinking that they have plenty of time to work on this. And so there's no rush with the whole college application process. And then the fourth one is that they're waiting on you to do it for them. So I'd like you to respond to that as well in terms of what it sounds like for your teen. Is your teen saying that they're too busy to work on college admissions? They already got this, they got time, or they're waiting on you to do it? Where are you on that? Okay, there are a few more of you that haven't responded yet. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds and then I'm going to close the poll since the majority of you have responded. All right. So here are the results. 80% of you said that your teen is saying, I got this. And again, these results, in the past, a lot more of my parents say that their teens is saying that they're too busy. And I've also had some parents who admitted that their teen was waiting on them to do it. And so I'm happy to see that none of you are in that camp. So I'm going to keep going. Thanks a lot for participating in that. So, this may be the attitude of your teen, but here's the reality of it in terms of college admissions. So the costs for college are going up. And I think that's something we all hear a lot about when we are, reading the newspaper or even seeing things on TV or online. College costs are going up. The second thing is that it's harder to get in. And I don't want to frighten you in any way, but it's a lot different in terms of getting in today as it was 5, 10 years ago. And so it's getting harder. The other factor is that it's more complicated in terms of getting in, because today there are a lot more steps to getting in than it was in previous years. And then the other factor is just that students don't have the time that they think they have. I actually, in my practice, start working with teens as early as ninth grade. And I also have families that will come in the middle school years. So teens will, what the research has shown is that teens know by sixth grade whether or not they want to go to college. And so waiting, much longer only, means that there'll be more stress, but it doesn't change the fact that the work will be there for them to do. One of the other statistics that came out of that Princeton Review report is that 64% of teens say that they can't get help from their parents. And so I think that for many of us, who are older in my generation, especially for the Gen Xers, our parents, couldn't help us either. So I was certainly in this camp when I was in high school. And one of the things about it, here's a picture of my parents over here on the left, and that's actually me as a little girl there. But my parents had neither one of them had gone to college. My mom had finished 8th grade, and my dad here had finished 10th grade. So when it came time for me to go to college, I applied to every college that wrote to me. And I took out this old typewriter here back in the day and just started typing up applications and writing them by hand to every college. And I ended up applying to 16 different colleges. I ended up getting accepted to Stanford University. And back then, this was back in '84, people didn't really know Stanford University as they do today. And I just remember when I was telling people that I was going to be going to Stanford, they were just like, Stanford, is that in Connecticut? And it's just like, no. But anyway, that's what they thought of it back then. So my mother and I got on this old Greyhound bus that you see here, and we actually rode the bus all the way from Memphis, Tennessee to Palo Alto, California. And mind you, when I had mentioned it earlier, my mother had no idea of what it would cost to go to college, and neither did I. So when she got ready to drop me off, she gave me a check for $70. And that was to last me for the entire school year. So you can imagine the look on my face when I got to the bookstore that very next day, and my books for the first quarter at Stanford was $350. So all I can say is that $70 carried me a long way through Stanford and finishing in 4 years. Now, when I finished Stanford in 4 years, I had $10,000 in loans. That's all I had, and everything else was paid for. So that was truly an amazing experience. But let me tell you, it was a lot of hard work in terms of getting to that point. Now, when I finished college, I went on to work in corporate America with a lot of these companies that you see here. And one of the things, though, that happened to me that was completely life changing was a few years into corporate America, I had my first son and became a parent. And when I had my first child, it was really different for me in terms of thinking about, wow, I don't want my own kid to have the experiences that I had in school, some of the struggles through K-12, as well as the struggles that I had through college. So what can I do, to make sure that their journey, his journey, isn't as rough as mine? Excuse me. And then I had my second son, and all of this time with having sons, there was a lot that I was doing in terms of trying to figure out schooling for them. And then came along a couple of years later, my daughter. So I had three kids that I had to worry about. And if you have more than one child, the thing you realize is that what you do for one is going to be different for the other. And throughout this process of trying to educate them, I became obsessed with schooling. And so a lot of what I'm sharing with you tonight is about that obsession. And I went back to Stanford to get my doctorate degree just because I wanted to answer some questions around how to support their education. So everything from homeschooling to day school to boarding school, private school, public school, you name it, I've done it in terms of all of the educational experiences that my children have had. But one of the things that happened that was also a turning point is that several years ago, some families asked me if I would work with them privately. And here are some of my earlier clients that I worked with. And once I started working with other families and not just supporting my own kids, that's when I had to start a program and a curriculum that really supported students with their success. And what I'll be sharing with you tonight comes from those successes that I've had in terms of my work with families privately and supporting them with going to college. So here are some of the results from my work with students. One is that my students have been accepted, 95% of them have been accepted into their top choice colleges. And there are a range of colleges, many of them your most selective and some of them that are non-traditional, but they have been accepted to their top choice colleges. Another statistic that I track, which is important for this webinar, is that our students have received $40,000 to $134,000 in scholarships. And that's nothing to sneeze at in terms of money that they got and they would not have received otherwise. All of this is straight merit money that my students have received. If they qualify for any need-based scholarships, that would have been on top of these monies that they received. Now, all of this has been done. I just had to get some water because if this is your first time hearing me speak, my voice is not this raspy. I'm just recovering from a cold. But this, the culmination of all of this in terms of working with families has evolved into a program that I refer to as the Get In, Get Money program. It's a 5-phase program. And the 5 phases of it are needs assessment, list development, application and aid, transition to college, as well as the network phase. Now, for our webinar tonight, what we're going to focus on are these 2 phases, list development and the application and aid phase. Those are the 2 phases that are most relevant for getting in and getting money for college. So I'm going to give you what I hope tonight are some real nuggets of information that you'll be able to apply with your own team. And I will be very intentional around giving you some real actionable steps, steps that I've taken with my clients, and I'm hoping will be steps that you also can apply with your teens at home. And so as we're going through this, you are welcome to ask questions as you have them. And, don't be shy at all. Just, you can type in the question and I can answer it as we're going along. Okay? So I'm going to start out with talking about those specific nuggets that I'd like to share with you tonight for how to support your teen with getting into college. And here are some key takeaways that I will go through with you as well as wrap up at the end. So the first takeaway is that your teen is in charge. Now, when I say this, some parents don't want to hear this, and that's because you know your teen very well. And it may be scary for you to think that your teen is going to be in charge of all of this. And there's a huge investment that your family is making in order for them to be in charge of it. So, what this really is about is the fact that colleges don't want to hear from parents. They don't want you calling them to, talk with them on behalf of your teen. And so it is up to your teen to do that. Mom and dad can help their teen with the process, but you cannot do it for them. And so being in charge for them is really about taking ownership of the process and doing those things that they need to do in order to be successful in the process. Your involvement in it in terms of when the parent starts doing for their teen, that's what's going to hurt them in terms of admissions. It happens all the time, and the colleges may not directly say it to you, but you will hear about it in terms of not being admitted. Your teen will hear about it from that side of it. So I really caution you to make sure that your teen is in charge of the process. Now, here are some actionable things that I do in my own practice with students to help them with being in charge of it. Because I talk with all of my teens when they start working with me privately to say, hey, this is your process. I may be coaching and guiding, but you're the one that's doing it. So here are some things I do. So one thing is the teen sets their own schedule with me. And so I don't, contact mom or dad to ask them to set up the schedule. The teen is in charge of that. That way it helps them with their time management and it gives them ownership of it by saying when they can meet with me. And yes, I may be pushing in terms of saying, hey, we need to meet in 2 weeks or we need to meet in 3 weeks, or can you have this done by a certain time and we need to meet then. But it is their responsibility to set that time up and to make sure that they know what other responsibilities they have and then schedule our meeting. The second thing is that I have all the students self RSVP for visits. Now, this is something that I want all of you who have juniors to definitely listen up for. So for Courtney, for Sarah, who have juniors, and a few others who haven't introduced yourselves just yet, if you have a junior, at this point, they should be making their reservations for campus visits that are coming up in the spring. That means that they go to the website and they actually do the reservation. Now, I know sometimes some moms and dads will do that for their teen, and it really hurts them because the teen should know that college's website. And sometimes, depending on the college that they're applying to, or that they're going to be visiting, when they do their RSVP for the campus visit, that then becomes their login information if they decide to apply in the fall. So I really don't want mom and dad RSVPing for campus visits. That's something that your teen should do themselves. The third thing that I do to ensure that the teen is in charge and that they're taking ownership of this process is I do pre-coaching with them. And that's something that you could do with your team. So what pre-coaching looks like for me is that I actually give them, the list of questions for their campus visits so that they know what to ask and they feel confident when they're going on that campus visit in, the things they're going to look for. Another thing in the way of pre-coaching is I mock interview all the students, before they go on their campus visits. And that's a way to help, just to support their success when they're on that visit and to give them the confidence that they need to be able to talk with admissions officers and ask questions that they may have. So pre-coaching is something that helps. And for you as their parent, it's providing them those guidelines for the campus visit, or maybe, giving them an activities resume template. That's a way to pre-coach because it helps them with knowing how to set up their activities resume. Maybe you review it for them, and that's a way to help with them being in charge. They're doing it, but you're just supporting their success. So I hope I hammered that home in terms of the teens being in charge, because it's really important in terms of their success with being able to get into college. Now, again, if you have questions as we're talking, you're welcome to post those questions and I will answer them as we're going along. Now, the next point I want to bring up in terms of getting into college is that your teen is more than a test score. And what I mean by that is I just want to disabuse parents of the notion that the test score is everything, because colleges are looking at students holistically, meaning that they're looking at teacher recommendations, they're looking at their essays, they're looking at the rigor of their high school curriculum. So they're looking at a number of other things aside from the test score. The test score is a part of it, but it's not all of it. And so I really, stress this as well with my families who have teens that are not good test takers. And so if that's the case for your teen, especially, here are some things to think about, some actionable steps that can be taken that can support their success with getting in, even if they don't have a high test score. So one, there's a website that's called fairtest.org. And this website has about 900 colleges that are test optional colleges. And that just means that these colleges look at students beyond their test scores. And so for many of them, they don't take test scores. And so your team doesn't have to worry about sending in those test scores if they're embarrassed by them in any way. The other resource is a website called Colleges That Change Lives. It's also a book as well. There are 40 colleges that are part of this group. And these are all colleges that look beyond the test score. Many of them are test optional. Some of them, they may have different kinds of grading. But overall, they're all smaller liberal arts colleges that really focus on developing that student faculty relationship, nurturing students in a way that is more holistic and not so much as about their scores and their grades, but the whole person. And they will do things around character development in a way that other schools may not have the bandwidth to do. So that's a great resource, if, your team doesn't score well on tests and they really want to look at some unique colleges that are not going to be focused on their test scores or in some cases even focused on their grades. The other thing that I do in terms of rounding out the list for my students and helping them with finding those programs, those colleges that may be a fit for them, is scouting other programs. Now, this is something that you can do just in the way of knowing what your teen's interests are. So, for example, let me give you a real concrete example of this. So, let's say you have a teen who's interested in the arts and they want to find some colleges that could be really good in the arts. Maybe a way of doing that is going to the website of a high school like Walnut Hill that's outside Boston, because they do have a strong arts program and you can see the colleges that those students are going to, and that can help with developing the list of colleges that your team could get into in the arts. So that's kind of what I mean by scouting other programs. Throughout the year, I go and visit different high schools as well to get a sense for how they're supporting their students in these different areas and helping them with developing their college list. And I use that information to support my students with getting into those colleges. The other thing, and this is one thing that's not that's a little bit off my script, if you will, but one thing I do want to say to you about this whole testing notion is that your teen only needs to take the ACT or the SAT. They do not need to take both. And so I would stress to you, especially for you that have 10th graders like Hequan and Roxanne, you have 10th graders and Earl, I would just say that your teen does not have to take both tests. And so what you can do is in sophomore year, do some practice tests to see which one they're better on, whether it's the SAT or the ACT. Then in junior year, only concentrate on the tests that they're best on. All of the colleges will take either or. So it's not necessary for students to take both tests. So let me move on to the next item as far as getting in, a real strong takeaway for getting in. Here's the kicker. Find the hook and not the ball. Now, what I mean by that is for years and years, families were saying, oh, the way to get into college is to be well-rounded. Let me just tell you right now, that is not the way to get in, especially when you're looking at selective colleges. So for some colleges that may work, but what colleges are really looking at is those students who stand out and they have some kind of hook, if you will, or some nugget that really speaks to why they would make a difference in that college community. So let me give you an example. Here's my student, Matthew. I had worked with Matthew's brother, and then a few years later, I worked with him. And with Matthew, he was one of those well-rounded kids on paper. So he participated in sports, he did lacrosse, he did tennis. He was involved in student government, he did volunteer work, and he also what else did he do? There was something else that he did. The point of it is he was doing a whole lot of things. So he could have sent in an application with an activities resume that showed a whole lot of things, and that would not have stood out at all. So what we did, what I, suggested to him in terms of his application is not to focus on all of those things, but just to focus on one thing. And his one hook was chemistry, because when we were talking, I mean, he talked about the fact that he liked chemistry and he was thinking about perhaps majoring in chemistry in college, or he could have done engineering or some other things. He could have majored in engineering, but again, maybe it would have been a little bit more competitive for him to apply into an engineering program given his resume. And so his hook was just chemistry. And so everything related to the colleges for him was about chemistry. That was his hook. And so I really encourage you to find your teen's hook. So if they are an amazing athlete, then that's their hook. If they are, gifted in something else, or maybe they've done research, or maybe they published, or maybe they're a great artist, whatever it is, find what that something is that helps them to stand out. And that's where you focus their list and their essays and everything else in terms of getting in. And that, really supports their success with getting in. So with getting in, I talked about finding the hook and not the ball. They're more than a test score. And then also making sure that your team is in charge of the process. So your team definitely has to be in charge of the process. So let me go on from there. And I want to give you some key takeaways for getting money for college. Now, again, you're welcome to ask questions at any time, because I know that for a lot of what I'm saying, you may not be hearing this anywhere else. So you're welcome to ask questions as we're going along. So here's some key takeaways for getting money for college. The first one is applying early. Now, this may sound very simplistic, but I can tell you every year parents are missing deadlines for things because they don't realize just how early really is. So for scholarships, your teen can start applying for scholarships as early as age 13. They don't have to wait till senior year. In fact, if they wait till senior year, it's not going to be very many outside scholarships that they can apply for. So I would suggest as early as possible, have them start applying for scholarships. These are all the outside scholarships that can apply to any college. So applying early. The other thing in terms of applying early, and this happens a lot with seniors, is that some colleges will have what's called priority deadlines if you want to qualify for money. And so that means, like for Bridget, who's from Dayton, if your son or daughter applies to Ohio State, the priority deadline is November 1st. So if they don't apply by November 1st, they don't get any money. If they're applying to a college like USC, University of Southern California, the deadline is December 1st. If they don't apply by December 1st, they may miss any scholarship money because it's on a first come, first served basis. They can still apply by January 15th, but the money may be gone. And in some cases, the money really is gone and there's no more left for them. So I really encourage families to apply early to get money, applying as early as 13 for outside scholarships, and then applying early with the early deadlines, the priority deadlines for scholarships directly from the colleges. Now, the next thing I'll say, there are going to be two key areas where there's money for college. The first one is going to be in the list. Now, what I mean by in the list is that the majority of the money that you will get from college will tend to be from the colleges themselves. And a lot of times, families may not know this. So when you're putting together your list, or helping your teen with putting together their list, you may be looking at the sticker price and not really thinking about how just different colleges on their list, how those colleges distribute money. The specific colleges distribute money. So there's a difference in that. So for example, I'll go back to Matthew again, my student that I was talking about earlier. In Matthew's case, when we were looking at colleges, once we figured out that his hook was going to be chemistry, it was looking at those colleges that had that were strong in chemistry. So looking at classes they took, the professors, which ones offered research in chemistry, because that would be another opportunity for getting money from the college. And then for those that had engineering, perhaps the angle was looking at the ones that had chemical engineering. So the list really mattered from that standpoint in terms of him getting money, because that's where the majority of his money was going to be coming from, the colleges. And so the net effect of it was that for one of the colleges Matthew applied to, he got $100,000 just from the university itself, and then the chemistry department gave him another 26,000 to come there. And this was before his family applied for any need-based aid. So this was all money directly from the college. And again, if his family qualified for need-based aid, this would have been on top of the 126 that he got directly from the colleges. And so, I mean, we can't get into this right now, but I'll just say that, when you apply for need-based aid, you can get loans and you can get, grants from the government, but it won't be as much as you would get from the colleges themselves. He also got, other monies from a number of other colleges. It was ranging, I think his lowest offer was in the 60,000 range, so 60 up to the 126 was his highest. And so there is a lot of money that comes directly from the colleges. So really be careful around the list of colleges that your teen is applying to. Now, the other way that a lot of money comes, from the colleges is through the essays. And so I'm going to tell you right now, if your teen needs help on writing, please get help, get some help for them on the writing. And so it could be, getting a tutor for them or having them, spend a little time after school. Most high schools don't teach writing anymore. It's assumed that you already know how to write when you get to ninth grade. And so many of them don't have writing programs. So I would really stress, providing some support for your teen outside of school for writing. And so when Matthew was writing his essays, there will be essays for your application and then essays for your scholarships. And so that's where the writing is so important. And those scholarships, will have pretty lengthy essays that you have to write, and that supports you with qualifying for money. And so with Matthew on one of his colleges, he just wrote about chemistry. He wrote chemical formulas as a response for one of the prompts. So that was the way to signal to them that that was his hook. And also it supported him with getting money, because they do read those essays to determine admissions and also to determine scholarships. Now, the final point I'll make in terms of getting money for college is mixing it up. Now, what I mean by that is it gets back to your list. You want to have a mix of publics and privates on your college list. And so please stress, make that a point with your teen, because when you go and look at the websites and look at the sticker prices, you're going to see that the public colleges might be 20,000 and you see these private colleges that may be 50,000. Well, the private colleges offer a lot more discounting than the public colleges. And so you may end up paying 20,000 for that public, but for that private, you could be paying far less than 20,000. So that's where a lot of families, I think, sometimes get kind of stuck with not getting as much money as they thought they would get, because they're only looking at the sticker price in some cases. Let me give you a real example. I had a student a few years ago. She lived in Austin and she applied to UT Austin. She was a pretty good student, and she applied to some private schools out of state. And it was cheaper for her to go out of state than to go to UT Austin. UT Austin offered her $600. I'm sorry, but what can you do with $600 for college? I mean, it was really nothing. And so it was less expensive for her to go to a private college that offered her more money than to go to University of Austin, because with that $600, she was going to still be paying a lot more to go there, even though it was in her own backyard. So those are some of the points I wanted to share in terms of, getting in, getting money. In terms of getting money, keeping in mind that, you have to apply early. Your teen needs to apply early. They also need to be mindful of the colleges on their list, because that's where most of the money is going to come from. And then also, having that mix of colleges, public and private, on their list, as well as their essays. Their essays are going to be so important for getting money. Now, back to what I said earlier about teens, not being able to get any help from their parents. How are you feeling about all of this? Are you feeling confident that you can help your teen in this process? Where are you? If you guys could type in where you are with this. Okay, so I hear from Roxanne. She's feeling confident that she could help. And Earl said he's feeling probably. Okay, Sarah said not so much. And then Charles, he's feeling probably. How about some of you others? Bridget, you say probably. Okay, that's good. And Courtney said probably as well. Okay, good. Now, one question I have for you is just how many hours do you think it would take for you to help your teen through the college admissions process? Does anyone know how long that process takes? And this is just helping. This is not doing the work for them. If you were to help your teen through the college admissions process, how long do you think it would take you? Any guess on the hours? Okay, Roxanne said 50 to 100. Okay, that's a pretty good guess. Courtney said about 200. That's good. Any others as far as the length of time it could take, as far as the hours for helping your teen? Okay. Charles had about 200 as well. So the actual number is 300 plus hours. That's how long it takes for parents to help their teen through the college admissions process. Now, one of the things in terms of thinking about this, I'll say, is, here's where parents get stuck, because it doesn't have to take 300 plus hours. Here's some places where parents get stuck. One is reliable information. So there's a lot of information that's online, but you have to really have some sources that are going to give you good information as far as, which colleges, as far as how to put the list together, etc. The other way that parents get stuck is resources and tools. I mean, so for example, I mentioned earlier about having an activities resume template. I mean, some parents don't have that. Maybe you don't have it from your school. Sometimes not having a database to really search it and understand, where, how to put the list together, or what colleges offer how much scholarship colleges offer. So that's one thing. And then another place where parents get stuck is on time. I mean, like I said to my junior families earlier, where you should be in the process right now is, planning your campus visits. Your teen should have already done their research and, making some informed decisions around which colleges they want to visit. And so if that hasn't been done already, certainly if you keep pushing it out closer to senior year, you're still going to have to do it, do these different parts of the process, but you're running out of time. And so oftentimes it's difficult, to make time for all these things that have to be done. So I want to share with you tonight, just in these closing minutes that we have, an opportunity that my team and I have been working on to really help parents through this and to really support them with reducing down that 300 plus hours that they would use through the college process. And what we have, you know, been working on and what we've actually started implementing is we have what's called College 101, Get In, Get Money online workshop. It was rolled out beginning of this year, and we've already completed a course just in January. But what the course is it's 5 course session dates that will be coming up this March. And so they will be held on Tuesday evenings in March. It's 75 to 90 minutes each week. And again, this is a course that's for parents. But let me tell you something exciting in terms of what's in the modules. So the first week is all about planning, just what are those things you need to know as far as getting started with the college admissions process. And what are some of the trends, as far as admissions concerned, that you should be knowing about, that you should be aware of, and what are some statistics to look out for. Now, in the second week, we're going to talk about laying the foundation. And this is really, what are the things your teen has control over? Things like their activities resume, things like their transcript. What should that look like in the way of courses that they should be taking? It's talking about those types of things, and also what assessments and inventories your teen should be taking and doing to get a sense for their personality, to get a sense for what colleges should be on their list. In the third module, we're talking about selecting the right colleges. How do you know which colleges should be on their list? And how do you go about creating that college list that makes sense for your team? And then in the fourth week, we're going to talk about applying from the admissions officer's seat. Now, this is going to be a vantage point that most parents never get to see. You're going to see those documents that the colleges are looking at to determine admission for your teen. So they're looking at the secondary school report. What is that? But we're going to talk about that. They're looking at those teacher recommendations, and I'm going to show you what teacher recommendations look like, so that you can get a sense for how your teen is being judged in this process. And then in the fifth and final week, we're going to talk about unpacking your financial profile and affordability. So we'll look at not just, what the forms are you need to complete. That's the low-hanging fruit. But we're going to look at how need is determined. So how does the federal government determine what your need is? And how do the colleges determine your need, so that you really get a sense for your own financial profile for your family? So it's a really packed 5-week course, and there's a lot of information that you'll gather from it, and a lot that you'll be able to use in real time with your teen. Whether you have a sophomore, whether you have a junior, you'll be able to start using this information right away. Now, for those of you who are signing up, we do have some fast action bonuses, and these will expire in the next 5 days. But here are the bonuses you get for signing up for this course in the next 5 days. The first one is getting a 45-minute coaching session with me. Now, this is a bonus session that we will do prior to the workshop, and it will be a time for you to talk with me about your teen. And we're going to really talk about those areas where you can get the most out of the course for the 5 weeks, talking about what things matter for that point where you are in the process, whether you have a 10th grader now, or if you have a junior now and your junior hasn't done as much, or maybe they've done more, but what is it that can really propel them in terms of moving forward with this process. So that's what that 45-minute coaching session is going to be about, before the class even starts. The second bonus is going to be a summer program list. Now, I don't know if any of you have started thinking about the summer. I can tell you that if you have a freshman, a sophomore, or a junior, the summer is critical, and that's something that you should be thinking about now. I start working with my students on summer programs in December. And so from December to February, we're pretty much looking at summer programs. Some of them have some early deadlines, but you'll get a list of programs that your teen can apply to. And this will save you hours and hours of time trying to find a summer program for them to do. And in the list that you'll get, it will explain, kind of why those particular programs have been selected for them. It's a customized summer list that you can use right away to start to have your teen to start applying to some really good programs that can support their success with getting in and getting money for college. Now, the program, as I mentioned to you, this course is going to start on March 1st. It's 5 weeks, and the classes are about 75 to 90 minutes each. And what you're going to discover is just kind of how your teen measures up vis-a-vis other teens. Now, I know that every, parent thinks that their teen is great, and your teen is great, but there are thousands of others that are also great. And so it's not to deflate you in any way, but it's just to, bring some reality to it and to give you some perspective on it. Because teens, your teen isn't just applying vis-a-vis other kids at their high school, but they have a global cohort that they're competing against. And so really getting a sense for that. Understand, also just kind of what it takes for your teen to get in. That's something key to this course that we're going to be talking about. And then developing your financial profile, because sometimes families don't know that going into this, and it will make a difference in terms of how you're putting all these things together and how you're supporting them in their success, so that it's not just a matter of them getting in only, but also getting money for college. Now, again, I mentioned that the deadline is February 23rd, and the value on this program is $2,400. And the investment, I know you want to know, so how much is this going to cost me? Because it's not going to be $2,400, but the cost for the program, the workshop, is $297. Now, there's a VIP course edition, and what that is there are 3 additional coaching sessions that you have within the 5-week period. So that's what the VIP course edition is. And I did have a few families in January who opted for the VIP course edition. And that was a way for us to talk outside of the class time, specifically about their teen, and to really support them with, road mapping what their plan was. You will get a roadmap with this workshop, and that'll help you with planning out each month going forward that your teen is in the college admissions process. The VIP session just gives us some time to work one-on-one together in terms of supporting your teen's success with it. So I know I covered a lot. I feel like I was talking really fast towards the end there, but I hope that this is an opportunity that you would consider. And I'd like to hear some of your questions now, questions about what we discussed overall, as well as any questions that you have about the workshop itself. So please go ahead and type those in. Okay, so I have a question from Charles. Charles asks, what if my teen isn't a good writer? How can what can I do to help them with the essays? And so this is something that comes up often, Charles. And what I'll say is just that the writing is really important, and I would recommend that you consider an outside tutor. I know you said that your teen is a 9th grader, and so I would say getting some support with writing now earlier on would be great. The other option you can do as well, Charles, is looking into perhaps a summer program that emphasizes writing. There are a number of them. I had a student a few years ago he was on the younger side. He was eighth or ninth grade at the time. And a summer program that I recommended for him, I didn't know if he would really be as interested because he's a boy, and I didn't know, he hadn't really expressed any interest in writing. He was more of a technical kind of boy. And so, what I recommended for him, because I knew he liked sports, was a sports writing camp that he did in the summer. And it was only like a week long camp, but it was also an opportunity for him to take his interest in sport and use that to develop his writing skills. And so those are a couple of ideas for you in terms of encouraging your son in his writing. And the same for any of you who have older students who are 10th grade, 11th grade. Those are also summer opportunities in writing for them as well. And even if they are, let's say if your child is interested in engineering, some technical area, there are some summer programs that have the writing component to it, where they can still do what they enjoy or learn about engineering, but at the same time have an opportunity to do some technical writing as part of it. I'm sorry, I'm coughing again. Are there any other questions? You guys are really quiet tonight. Any other questions? Okay. So, doesn't look like I have any others. But what I will do is you will get a replay of the webinar from this evening and more information as far as sign up for the workshop, but certainly hope that I will see several of you in the course. It's a really interactive and somewhat intensive at times course, but definitely worthwhile, and you'll have some actionable steps as we're going through it to really support your teen's success. So I want to thank you again for joining me this evening, and I appreciate your time. So take care and good night.